Well, colleagues, good morning, good afternoon. Thank you very much for joining us. This is the fourth session of this training on adaptive approaches to evaluation. In this pill, we're going to talk about methods to capture contribution in unpredictable environments, which is a very interesting topic, and you have expressed a lot of interest. If you recall, this is we've had 3 pills last year, ending in December. So this is the 4th, and we have 2 more to go on this training. So thank you very much for those that have come with us on this journey, on this training. And if you recall, Jordi and Joseph, maybe say
yep.
hi.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for
Hi.
joining.
You
Hello,
remember
good
them from
morning and
the
afternoon.
previous pill. So
And we remember them as well when we see the names. So yes.
Yes.
As well.
So we're here again, and so thank you for joining. And yes, let's talk about then these 2 interesting topics. So if you recall, we're in phase 2, so we're finalizing now the technical sessions with these 3 we have this year. And then for phase 3, once we are done with the technical sessions, whichever office is interested in testing these methods, trying, experimenting, then we can also provide support and accompany you when you pilot any of the approaches that we have seen in this training. So we can talk about that as well after we're done with all the technical sessions. So yeah, Jordi and Joseph, if you want to then start.
Yeah, Joseph.
Thank you, Valeria, for the introduction, and welcome everyone. Nice to see your names here, and looking forward to this session with you. Today we have this is the menu we have on our plates. We will start by contextualizing these pills on the adaptive management overall model, the compass, as you have in UNFPA, and then we're going to talk about 3 specific things. One, because the session today is about capturing contribution in unpredictable environments. So we will dig upon a little bit what does it mean, but what do we mean by unpredictable environments? And then we will focus most of the session on 2 methodologies for that. One is strategy testing, and the other one is about outcome harvesting. We have also the pleasure today, we have with us the Myanmar country office. It's a country office that is already practicing, implementing outcome harvesting. So we have Winnie and Sridevi from Myanmar country office that today will share their experience. So we are very glad to have them on board. And finally, we will wrap up with some next steps. The idea today is that that we concentrate, we curate, these contents on adaptive evaluation approaches. Adaptive evaluation is part of the compass. The compass has 4 drivers. They are leadership, collaboration, agility, and learning, and they all drive adaptation. Evaluation has a lot. It's a key component during not only learning, but also across the different program cycle in UNFPA. And you know that for the ones who already attended some of the sessions, monitoring and evaluation in an adaptive context happens not only at the end, but also during implementation. And also it's important to already envisage evaluation in the design phase of any program. We'll talk about this also because these 2 methods are very relevant to this, the method that we will see today. The idea is for you as M&E officers, we will talk about a little bit, we will have a strategic approach. So for you to know what these methodologies are and when you can use them, when it's best, for your purposes. offices. And then it will be also a technical approach, because we will also talk about what they are and how to implement them. So I think these two approaches can be very relevant for your role as M&E officer. Next, Jordi. Remember that you have, Jordi just shared with us, you have all, the idea is that you discern, you make this information, you digest this information, you make it yours and relevant to your own context and the things, the projects you are doing right now in your country offices. And you have in the Drive link that Jordi just shared all the materials. You also have, you know, the materials and the recordings from previous sessions. So feel free just to navigate, you know, all the content according to your needs. So this is the Compass, this adaptive management model in UNFPA that has been the first model of this kind in the UN system, actually. It's a holistic management approach, which is based on this collective inquiry. And in order to pause, reflect, sense, learn what is happening, and take timely action to adapt, you know, the programs we have that we implement based on information about the present, the past, and the future, so we can make those adjustments. Adaptive evaluation actually has a very important role, and it features those evaluation approaches that are fit for adaptive management. Those approaches may include tools, methodologies that can really help us learn and adapt, you know, in those evaluations that are conducted in complex environments. And when we say complex environments, unpredictability is part of this complexity, actually. So next, Jordi. In order for you to have an overall picture of what we have done, we'll do a quick recap. We do a quick recap because, well, some of you were already in the previous spills. For those who haven't, please go there. You have the recordings and materials, because we have curated the content in a way that is sequential. So for example, some of the methodologies we will see today, such as strategy testing and outcome harvesting, they have a lot to do as methodologies that operate under very highly complex environments. And we touch some of the elements we will be talking about today in the previous pills. The first one, we focus on how to foster evaluation use. We talk a lot about user engagement, and we saw specifically two methodologies, timely feedback loops. And then also we spoke about emergence in evaluation, how to capture emergence, which is how to happen those things that are unpredictable, that happen by interaction of different agents, sometimes triggered by changes in context. So this is an important concept that we will also be speaking today. The second pill was about methods for learning and adaptation in real time. So this is one of the main challenges now as we conduct an evaluation, how we can already capture what is happening and how can we fit, you know, this knowledge into adjustments and adaptation of the programs and that we are implementing. Here, we frame that session under the utilization focused evaluation approach, which is actually linked to user engagement. And we spoke specifically about real-time evaluation, and then some methodologies that fit into utilization focus, which is developmental evaluation, real-time learning, and adaptive inquiry frameworks. Some are approaches, some are methods, some other are tools. And then the third pill was about actually methods for capturing complexity. We talk about complexity, the characteristics, the features of complex systems and complex environments. And we saw also three methodologies that are used in order to capture that complexity, to learn about the programs implemented in complex environments, and actually to make decisions based on that. So we saw creative tensions, we saw also causal feedback loops and the iceberg model. And the focus of today's section is actually on how we can capture the contribution of the programs and interventions we implement amidst unpredictable environments. And for that, we will see strategy testing and outcome harvesting. You will see the main features of each other. You will see also how best we can use one or the other in detail. But we chose these ones because to us, these two are really relevant in order to capture that contribution in both monitoring and evaluation. So let's start with unpredictable environments. And we will start by disclosing a little bit what do we mean by unpredictable environments. The premise here is that we cannot forecast or predict what will happen. When we work in really complex and turbulent environments, predictions normally do not use. So we can no longer just analyze the past, see what patterns, you know, explain what happened and then make a prediction based on that, because unpredictable events alter this sequence, this logic, as we used to. The adaptive management model in UNFPA already envisages that the contextual environment is called tuna, so that embraces this complexity. There are several concepts, that describe complexity and unpredictability, like VUCA, and also tuna. UNFPA decided to include tuna. Tuna is an acronym for turbulence, uncertainty, novelty, and ambiguity, because increasingly, those programs that UNFPA implements are actually happening in tuna environments. Tuna has the U, the U is uncertainty, and also it works for unpredictability, which is actually the focus of today's session. So there's a critical thing here, that when the organization is normally using a logical framework approach, is mostly used as a culture, to manage programs based on a linear analyze to predict sequence or mindset. And adaptive management requires a mindset shift towards a learn to adapt mindset. So this is actually, we will have a specific pill about evaluative mindset, which is the last one. And we will invite you also to come here, because it's not only about the tools, but also about which mindset supports, underlies how we use the tools that we have at our service for adapting in programming. Next, Jordi. So just to remember, this is something we actually analyzed last pill when we talk about complexity, but a complex system has the following features. And a complex system, when we say system, can be a socioeconomic system, can be a political system, can be an organizational system, can be an ecological system. So can be any of the systems in which we interact with as we implement our programs and interventions. So one key feature is that it involves large numbers of interacting elements. So that's actually one of the main features of that complexity. And these interactions are non-linear. So minor changes can really produce massive major consequences. One example was precisely the container big ship that was stuck in the canal, in the Suez Canal, that led to massive disruptions, in supply chain, in rising prices, and so forth, in different systems, socioeconomic, food systems, and so on. A complex system is also dynamic. This means that we cannot just learn about the system by learning about the sum of its parts. We actually have to see that the whole is greater than the sum of its parts, and that solutions can be imposed. So it has its proper behavioral patterns. And these arise from the circumstances, from those interactions between the elements, and also between the system and the environment. A complex system may appear to be ordered and predictable, but insight does not lead to foresight, because the external conditions and system constantly change. They are interacting in a constant motion. So emergence is actually one of the concepts that may explain, what the novelty, which is included also in the tuna concept, that may emerge out of these interactions. So in a complex system, we cannot predict or forecast what will happen. What will happen really depends on those interactions between the agents and the changing external conditions. So this is part actually of the description of the Kinefin framework that describes the 4 quadrants of potential environments in which we may work. And this one is one of the quadrants, it's the complex environment. So what we thought that would be like this, that's a linear logical framework approach to actually design programs and implement them. So we have our plan, we have a vision or our expected results. So we just put several resources, we plan and design some activities, we expect to have some outputs, which lead to the desired outcomes that finally you drive to the desired results or impact. So this is actually what we normally think of it traditionally when we design, implement, and evaluate programs and projects. But in reality, when we operate in unpredictable environments, this ends up looking like this. So yes, we may have a plan, we also may have a vision, but then what happens in the middle may be disrupted and altered, by those unpredictable events that happen that were not foreseen, because we didn't have that information at the beginning when we designed the program. So this is a major characteristic of working in such a predictable environment. Next, Jordi. So working in predictable environments, what does this mean for programs? So basically, because we've been talking about M&E, monitoring and evaluation, adaptive approaches, this means also that not only those M&E approaches have to be flexible, but we also need to design flexible program approaches that allow a space for adjustments while they are implemented. So this is an important message. What does this mean? That means that we already, when we design a program, we design it also taking into consideration accountability for learning, for learning about how the program is being implemented, also learning about those unpredictable events that may alter, may influence also the implementation of the program. And as we learn from this, we also react and we adapt also the program as we implement it. So in the context of a flexible program approach, we may say that solutions are really difficult to predict. Outputs and outcomes may emerge, during implementation time, and then we also have to operationalize, make a space, and systematize the spaces for pausing, reflecting, and learning out of it. A non-linear evolutionary path may emerge through experimentation and responding also to opportunities that we may see as we go. And the program design evolves throughout implementation, and it is important that it's flexible enough to allow for those adjustments. And actually, monitoring and evaluation really helps in identifying, capturing, that emergence, learning out of it, and providing the evidence, to make these necessary adjustments. So the program's strategy or theory of change is adjusted throughout the program implementation. And significant adjustment in program direction are expected over the course of implementation. So when we have these characteristics here, we then make sure that we have, since the onset, a flexible program approach that may allow space for those monitoring and evaluation adaptive approaches, to take place during implementation and to fit the continuous adjustment of the program. So in practice, there are certain programs that are more prone to actually operate in unpredictable environments. For example, those are programs that really are involved in some initiative we are developing, involving quite a great deal of innovation. So those are normally pilot programs with limited evidence that we just are pioneering programs that we just launched, and the emphasis is more on developing the solution. Then also there's a type of programs that have really uncertain pathways for change that may include policy dialogue interventions, policy advocacy interventions, politically informed also interventions, and community behavioral change that happen in really highly unpredictable, complex environments. And thirdly, we may also have programs operating in uncertain or a high degree of uncertainty and instability. And such programs are typically programs that are implemented in post-conflict and fragile settings. So those are the three areas where mostly programs really happen in those unpredictable environments. And then now Jordi will introduce us what does this mean also for M&E. So Jordi, the floor is yours.
Thanks so much, Joseph, for the clear explanations. So this type of the programs involving innovation and certain pathways and operating in certain environments, these are the programs that are more prone to a flexible approach because they are in an unpredictable environment. And the thing with unpredictability is that actually unpredictability reverses the logic of the traditional M&E function. As Joseph showed in the slide where you had a very organized pathway of change, there is a monitoring and evaluation. Traditional monitoring and evaluation usually reflects the logic of a linear, stable process. So we always start with the inputs, with the activities, and then those activities will produce some deliverables, some outputs that then will generate the changes, and the changes are outcomes that then would lead to the impacts. This is always the logic. that we do. And between each one of these elements, we make assumptions, saying, well, our outputs, our deliverables, such as training or advice, will lead to people thinking differently or doing things differently. That's why then we will see a change. And those are the assumptions. How these things will happen, those are we assumptions. But what happens when you are in an unpredictable environment? That clear line becomes the mess that you have seen in the slide that Joseph has changed. Outputs still happen, activities still happen, outcomes are generated, but not in the sequence that you thought. And the assumptions, by definition, in a complex and an unpredictable environment, usually the assumptions that you make end up being different assumptions. So usually are invalid. So what do you do? Well, what you cannot do is not looking at those assumptions throughout the time of the intervention. You have to keep on checking them, because you already know that you start with an initial assumption, but that reality somehow will surprise you because you're in an unpredictable environment. So this is why what we need are different ways of assessing that line of contribution between outputs, outcomes, and impacts. Yeah, we still need to know how the problem contributed, but in an unpredictable environment. So what are the type of monitoring and evaluation systems that would enable us capture contribution in the messy slide that Joseph has changed, where there is a lot of lines and different relationship between outputs and outcomes that is not very linear? Well, there are several ones. The two ones that we have chosen, for the reasons we will explain immediately, are strategy testing first and outcome harvesting afterwards. We will go into each one of those and we'll tell you about them, what they are, why they are used, how they are used, and then who is using them. Strategy testing is mostly a monitoring framework methodology. So it was thought as a monitoring tool, but so usually it's not used for evaluations as such. But as we have already mentioned in previous pills, in adaptive management, and when you move into adaptive management, the line between monitoring and the separation between monitoring and evaluation is not that clear. Monitoring and evaluation are much more together as we could see, those of you that were there with real-time evaluation. Real-time evaluation is right in the middle between an in-depth monitoring and a constant ongoing evaluation. So it would be there right in the middle. Strategy testing would be that kind of animal. It's thought from the point of view of monitoring, but it's monitoring to learn and monitoring in an unpredictable environment. And it looks at outcomes as well. It's not monitoring as we know of activities and outputs. It also looks at outcomes. And then outcome harvesting, it's mostly used for evaluation, but you can also use it as a monitoring tool. We will see that. The examples that we see in the development world are mostly in evaluation. So outcome harvesting is mostly used in evaluation. And it's, let's say, the STAR methodology, the one that most organizations in the UN and the World Bank is also using them, international NGOs, donors like the European Union, and the Australian government and others, as we will see, are using to capture contribution and learning in messy theories of change like the one that Joseph taught us. And we will devote some time in outcome harvesting. We have an example in UNFPA of using outcome harvesting in third-party monitoring, which is the case that Joseph mentioned in Myanmar. And we have here Sridevi and Vinay. They will present the case. So we will learn as well about the practicalities of applying outcome harvesting. Okay, these two can be used together, as it happens with many methods that we've been showing you. They can be used together. We will show you some examples of some agencies that use them together. So they use strategy testing for the monitoring and then outcome harvesting for the evaluation. In unpredictable environments, if you put them both together, you have the whole M&E for unpredictable environment type of picture. That's why we also decided to put them together and to explain them together. Let's start with the strategy testing. Strategy testing, it will be surprisingly familiar for most of you, as you will see. It's a very intuitive tool. It was created by the Asia Foundation. Yeah, so the Asia Foundation made that methodology in a partnership with the Australian government in a project that they funded for a number of years in order to find adaptive methodologies. You have also elements of the strategy testing as a tool in the A-Compass, the A-Compass that Joseph mentioned. On page 35 of the A-Compass, the adaptive model of UNFPA, you have a link to a toolkit And tool 13 of that toolkit is a strategy testing. So you have a one page with a summary of most of the things that we will be talking about here, there, and also a few templates. So let's see what strategy testing is. In very short, strategy testing, it's a periodic structure break. So it's a pause and reflect. Yeah, in the adaptive management model, in the A-Compass, you see very often pause and reflect. So this is what it is. Strategy testing, it's based on periodic structure breaks from day-to-day program, where stakeholders, that's important. You don't do that on your own, just the implementers. You bring also stakeholders, you choose who they might be, sometimes implementing partners, sometimes maybe other UN agencies, if it's a joint program, or maybe even government institutions, it depends that on you. And then you reflect on what you have learned, and then you check whether the assumptions of your program and your strategies, even the activities, are still valid in light of the changes in the environment, because you are in an unpredictable environment. So you know there are shifts in context, there are new pieces of information. How is that affecting our strategy? So you make this structural stop, pause, and reflect. These are a little bit like the adaptive moments that the A-Compass talks about in the A-Compass model. This is what strategy testing is. It's a type of adaptive moment. What makes it different from traditional monitoring tools, and that's a very important, in the spirit and nature of strategy testing, it is that it's not designed to report or track on progress based on planned activities. That is not the type of tool that this is. Okay, the typical tools to report on progress based on planned activities, these are the ones for traditional programs. Here, the idea is a monitoring tool to learn and to adjust and to adapt your program, not to report on progress. Having said that, as you will see in a minute, it's a method that it's based a lot in keeping logs and keeping track and documenting all the process for accountability purposes. So it's a powerful tool in terms of accountability, but it's not designed for reporting. It is designed for learning. Second, as I said, it tracks everything and documents everything. We will show you the templates, but there is the program timeline and the adjustment tracker. So there is a number of documents in which you lock in. They are like locks of facts that you keep track on that might have an impact on your strategy. And then whenever you do a change in your strategy, you also put it in a log. So the whole process is documented. That makes it very transparent, and of course serves accountability purposes in front of a donor. But it is not to report on progress. It is to learn. It's an accountability as learning type of tool, strategy testing. And as we said, it's an adaptive moment essentially that focuses on reviewing your program strategy. In the A-Compass, you see that adaptive moments can be used for many things, mostly to adapt many aspects, to adapt things that you're doing, activities. This is an adaptive moment, strategy testing, to adapt your strategy. That's why it's called strategy testing. The focus is your strategy, which is usually reflected in a program theory or in a theory of change. This is the idea. Okay, so remember that strategy testing, not for reporting on progress, it's a learn to adapt monitoring tool that reflects in order to adjust the program. And therefore, because all that messy slide that Joseph showed us, this is a way, an organized structure way to increase the likelihood of achieving your results, okay? Because the outputs, we know that in a predictable environment, you will have to change the course of action, establish new activities, implement new activities, produce new outputs, make new alliances with partners that you didn't think about. But the idea is to do that in a very structured process, so you ensure that you achieve your results. That's why this is a tool for acceleration. If you don't do anything, if you keep on doing what you thought you would do at the beginning, and the context is changing, probably you are being deviating from your objective. This adaptation through strategy testing helps us accelerate. Why using it, strategy testing? Well, the idea here, the main idea is that strategy testing, it's the typical tool for flexible programs. If you have the normal program applied in a context that is not very unpredictable or turbulent, don't do strategy testing. It's time consuming. It implies quite a lot of work, and therefore the effort would not be worth it. But what happens when you are in in a program or in an intervention where you cannot define from the beginning exactly what you will do or what you will get, maybe because what you're trying to do is to influence a process of reform or a policy in a particular country, that does not depend on you. That's unpredictable by definition. There are many political forces, institutional forces, interest, incentives, different ideas that come into the picture. The relationship between many actors that you would like to influence, it's not something that you can control. And that emerges as you go. Yeah, it is that is the type of, because of this type of projects implemented in this type of context, we need a tool that is more flexible. And that's what strategy testing does. In other words, because at times the path to outcomes evolve, they're not clear from the beginning because of all these aspects. Sometimes the problem that you're trying to solve, not only in policy programs, but in community based, when you're intervening in a community, maybe you need to understand more the program. So you are intervening. That's why we have phase 1, phase 2, and phase 3 of many programs. Maybe you want to understand better child marriage in that particular context. Yeah, there are many interests at play, and you will have to be adjusting what you do as things emerge. And also in policy and in advocacy, you would like to adjust based on opportunities as they arise. You know very well that sometimes in order to influence, there are windows of opportunities. You talk a lot. When we have been working with you, Joseph and I, in evaluations in the past, you talk a lot about windows of opportunity for policy and advocacy. Suddenly there is a change in government, there is a new actor, that it's more that it's more ready for the type of changes you want to promote. That's a window of opportunity. Then you have to adapt. So actually, you already do all this. The strategy testing, you do it. We all of us do this type of thing. The important thing with strategy testing is that it documents and it makes it systematic. Yeah. So it links action with learning through these pause and reflect moments that it proposes. We will see now how it works, and you will see that it's something that most probably you're already doing, but it is a way of making more structured and institutionalizing these processes of reflection that sometimes are a bit more ad hoc or intuitive. In very short, in these 4 lines, the way it works is you have to think about an initial theory of change or program theory. So at least you have to have a best guess about how do you think things will work out, who are the main stakeholders, what will you do at least in the beginning, and what type of changes you would like to generate. So you have to have a bit of an idea, but this theory of change is not static. It's not something that you put in a paper, you do the boxes and arrows, or you write the narrative, and then it's kept there waiting for the evaluators to come later on and evaluate to what extent you have contributed to the theory of change. It's a theory of change that you already know from start. That's why the methodology call it initial theory of change. It's not static. It will be a dynamic. Yeah. And then you adjust activities, outputs, even outcomes through these regular and systematic collective discussions. And then you track everything that you do. You track the elements that make you change the strategy. And then you also track down and log the changes that you make to the strategy and what you have learned out of these discussions. In the Asia Foundation, when they created this, or they came up with this methodology through practice in 2015, they did those collective reflections every quarter, so for a year. So for you to have an idea, we will present you their methodology, but then you can adjust this, of course, as you like. But the way this was designed was to have a quarterly pause and reflect meeting about the strategy in an unpredictable context. There is some preparatory work in order to implement strategy testing as a monitoring tool for learning. The first, of course, is that you have to have your initial program or theory of change, and at least a bit of what is the problem, what are the outcomes, the activities or interventions, and the assumptions. Yeah, at least to have a bit of a clear idea about that at the beginning. And then there is you work on a program timeline. A program timeline is like a lock. You lock in major events or decisions that happen that could have an impact on your strategy, and that could be a reason in order to adapt at some point. The relevant things that happen, a change in government, there might be, some problems that you have with a partner, an opportunity that have emerged because there has been a new piece of legislation or regulation, or maybe there have been a problem. So you track that in this program timeline, yeah, all these aspects that, and then when you sit down in the reflective meeting every quarter, you bring in the program timeline and say, okay, all this is happened over the last quarter. Should we adapt? Should we do anything about it? And that's what the conversation goes around. And the third element that you have to have into account before having all this program timeline is also engagement with relevant stakeholders. You don't improvise engagement with the stakeholders. So make sure that you have an engagement strategy linked to strategy testing. Sometimes this engagement might include other business units, implementing partners, as we say, government, other programs, or even donors. That depends on you, on the type of aspects that you would like to reflect into these post-reflect meetings that you have every quarter. The Asia Foundation came up with this, they applied this in 4 steps, in 4 steps. So the first step is the state of play, which is examining what has happened since you drafted the theory of change 3 months, probably 4 months ago, 3 months ago, or since the last review that you did in the previous quarter. And then you look at these major external changes, events, key decisions that have happened, which you should already have in the program timeline, because this program timeline is a lock when we will show you an example where you lock in all these major events that might have had an impact, or that could have an impact in the way that you're implementing your strategy, and maybe make it more difficult for you to achieve your goals, or maybe there are new opportunities there to incorporate into your strategy. The second step is the actual reviewing and discussion. That would be what the A-Compass calls the adaptive moment. That would be the equivalent. This is step 2 of an adaptive moment. And the Asia Foundation developed a number of guiding questions that can help you have that discussion. So there are a number of questions about the assumptions, about the activities, what has changed, what could be happening that we're not incorporating into the strategy. There is a number of guiding questions that can help you having this discussion. Once you've got these discussions, usually it's 1 day for the Asia Foundation, but you could do that in a few hours or in half a day as well. But the way, when they applied it, it was 1 day workshops, reviewing and discussing workshops. Then the third step is about revising your strategy. So you make adjustments. It's not just a meeting about possibilities and maybe we could do this, we could do that. The methodology is, okay, once you've gone this pause and reflect, then you act and you make the adjustments or refine activities or maybe redefine assumptions. And here the focus is on what should we be doing and reformulating our strategies to make sure that we achieve our outcomes and that we have an impact. That's why that thinking helps acceleration. And the fourth is documenting this process. In the timeline, in the program timeline, you document all the elements that could have an effect on your strategy. But then here in this revising step, you make revisions to, okay, we will incorporate new strategies, or we will incorporate a new partnership, or we will stop doing this and we will do more of that. Or you make decisions, and those have to be reflected, and they're reflected into another lock document, which is the adjustment tracker. There is a document in which, so every change that you do to the original strategy, you track it as well, and you explain, okay, because of that element and because of the discussion, this is what we changed. So therefore, you keep a track record of all the changes and all the adjustments that you do into the strategy. Of course, as you can assume, this is step 3, revising, means that you should be operating into a flexible program. In the table that Joseph presented a few minutes ago, there were traditional, if your program is static and does not allow any changes and any adjustments at all, then you cannot consider strategy testing. This is why it is so important. Strategy testing goes together with flexible programming. So if we want to use a strategy testing, there has to be some degree of flexibility into the program. Okay, so strategy testing uses several templates. The main ones that we've mentioned, the theory of change, there is a template for the theory of change. You already have templates for program and theory of change in UNFPA. Then there is the program timeline, which is a template where you lock in all the major events and decisions that could have an impact on, effect or influence your strategy. Then there is a template with guiding questions, although you can come up with your own guiding questions in the reflective meetings. And the last one would be the adjustment tracker, when you lock in all the changes that you have made into the strategy. as you can imagine, in an unpredictable environment, many things and many adjustments are made and many change and course of action. Then when an evaluation comes, when you have a midterm review, if you have strategy testing as a monitoring, then it is much easier to assess the contribution that you did to the outcomes in unpredictable environment, because you're tracking all the changes that you did in your strategy in order to ensure that the outcomes are made. That's why it is very much related to assessing contribution. It paves the way and produces all the data in a way that enables you then to assess contribution to results in unpredictable environment. The real templates that they use, the Asia Foundation, are in this document. This is the document. So if you just click into this link, the slides are already in the Google Drive, and the link to the Google Drive is in the chat. You just link here. The last pages, the 4 last pages of this document is the theory of change, the program timeline, the guiding questions, and the adjustment tracker. Okay, so everything is in this document. And you also have some adapted versions that Joseph and I, Valeria and Taranga, worked on in the 8 Compass toolkit. So a program timeline looks a bit like this. This is a program timeline explained. As you can see, you've got the date, you have major events, the type of event, and then why this event is relevant, why it is important that we keep track and we log this event. Yeah, and this is the type of document that then you put on the table when you do these quarterly pause and reflect meetings and sessions in strategy testing. And the other one is the adjustment tracker. So you've got the type of the component of the strategy, the assumptions, the statements, the outputs, the interventions, then the changes that you have made, yeah, all the changes that you have made, explaining why you made those changes, and then the implications of the changes. So here you can identify, there might be budgetary implications, there might be implications in terms of now the likelihood of achieving the outcomes is higher because we're incorporating a different partner, or we have made an alliance with a particular stakeholder that helps us entering into a political space that we were not in the past, whatever. All it's tracked. Yeah? This is why strategy testing we think is quite important. This is a snapshot of some of the guiding questions. They're a little bit adapted to UNFPA, but they are based on the guiding questions that you can find in the Asia Foundation document. When we finish this, you go and have a look, but they're the guiding questions that you can use in these pause and reflect meetings that you have in strategy testing. So who is using strategy testing? Well, the Asia Foundation, of course, are using strategy testing. This is the document in the previous slide is the same one, working politically in practice. So as you can see, strategy testing is a learn to action methodology for monitoring that has been created in the framework of policy and advocacy, of projects that work politically, that they are politically informed. Because the fact that they work in policy and reform, that makes them unpredictable by definition. Yeah, it's the second type that Joseph presented. The innovation, the second one, were the ones in which the pathway, the causal pathway is not clear. And the third one are more the ones on humanitarian settings. This is the second type. So this is where this tool comes up. And you have in this tool, when you go through the document, cases in Nepal, Mongolia, Indonesia, Myanmar, and the Philippines. So this is the seminal document, and they kept on using it. We just put here a link to a presentation that they did in 2019 in Myanmar. So they were using strategy testing as a monitoring tool in a program that went beyond the ones that they analyzed for in 2015. And also you have the Christian Aid and Irish Aid are also using strategy testing, and the ODI, which is a think tank in the UK, the Overseas Development Institute, have been writing about how useful that is. We are sure that there are many others that are using strategy testing. The thing is that they might not write about it, so it's difficult to know if they don't write about it, because it's a tool that it's politically adaptable to everything. So here you have this example. It's a 5-year program on governance, peace building, and human rights. Yeah, so when it comes to working on rights-based approaches and intervention, it's also interesting. Also in this document, the interesting thing is that it combines strategy testing with outcome harvesting, and it links the two through the theory of change. So that's why we also thought that this document would be interesting, because it mixes it with outcome harvesting, which is the following the following method that we will show you. Some tips with the strategy testing, or some considerations, I'm not sure they're even tips, but considerations based on our experience, is make sure that you use strategy testing when you have to use it. Sometimes the causal connections between your activities, your outputs, and your outcomes are relatively clear, and you don't need to be revising your strategy every 3 months. Yeah. So if that is the case, you don't need to apply the strategy testing full-fledged, as we have explained here. Maybe you can adapt some of the elements, yeah, consider some of the elements that inspire you, but not the full approach of we have explained it here. Be creative, yeah, as I mentioned already, link it with evaluations, because it's a monitoring tool that it's to learn. And in evaluations, we use evaluations in order to learn. So link strategy testing as a monitoring tool with evaluations, then you might have a type of a nearly real-time M&E, monitoring and learning system, you see, because you do all these meetings like every 4 months, you're tracking all the changes and adaptations that you have made. So combine it with other evaluation and also monitoring elements that you might have. Combine it with outcome harvesting. We know ODI has written about it and it makes a lot of sense. And then it's important that you get the buy-in from using a strategy testing. If you use a strategy testing, you will need more budget than if you do the traditional monitoring, which is about checking deviations according to outputs and just getting the implementation reports from your implementing partners and seeing how you deviate from the outputs. This means that you have to bring people in and you have to have discussions. You have to keep a program timeline and the adjustment tracker, so that it's additional work. Therefore, it means that it needs more budget, and it will not produce the type of monitoring reports that you produce in a traditional setting. So make sure that you get the buy-in of the donors. Okay, so this is a strategy testing. It's very intuitive. If you have any questions, the materials are all in the folders. If you can go through them, review them, read that document. It's only less than 20 pages from the Asia Foundation. And then if you have questions that you would like to apply any and you have some need for clarification, you can contact Valeria, Joseph, and I. We will be absolutely glad to answer any questions when the time comes. Okay, so if there's no major aspects, let's now look at outcome harvesting. You have here the steps. As you can see, outcome harvesting is a method. It's also very intuitive, and most probably some of you have already used the idea of outcome harvesting in some of your programs. Actually, it's the logic of outcome harvesting. It's a logic that you apply when contexts are unpredictable and turbulent, and you still want to know how you contributed to whatever has happened, even if what has happened is not what you initially thought that would happen. So this is how outcome harvesting is generated. We will go through these 6 steps, and here again, you have a tool, a specific tool in the A Compass, which is tool number 14, which you can access through page 35 of the A Compass, with 3 slides about the main aspects of this tool and how to apply it. Okay, so let's see what is outcome harvesting. You have here outcome harvesting. The word is hyperlinked. If you click, you go into the website for outcome harvesting, where the creators of outcome harvesting have put on a number of resources, and there are blocks and resources on and examples on outcome harvesting. So make sure that you go through that. It's a way of thinking about monitoring and evaluation when the programs are implemented in a complex context, but you still, even if it's complex and if it's unpredictable, you still want to know to what change have you contributed and how it happened. Okay, this is how it is. And when we say complex context, we mean this, which is exactly what Joseph explained at the beginning of this presentation when he talked about unpredictable environments, is that you cannot predict what will happen, or you cannot even predict the pathways that you will use in order to achieve your results. So this is the context. The key element or characteristic of outcome harvesting is that it reverses the logic, and this is very important to understand. It reverses the logic. Yeah, most evaluation approaches in most evaluation approaches, you think in terms of, okay, so this was our problem, we got these inputs, then we designed these activities and these outputs, and then with these outputs, we generated some changes. Let's look for those changes. And then, by the way, let's see if there is any intended changes, and then try to explain the contribution. So you start from the project, you start from the intervention, right? You start from the intervention. The center of the wall is what you thought that you wanted to achieve and your intervention. Here, outcome harvesting reverses this logic. And the first thing you do is you harvest, you look for changes. So you take your, of course, your target groups and the groups that you wanted to influence and in the area where you wanted to have an impact, and you try to get to see what changed for those groups. Yeah, what changed? And when we say what changed, we mean all type of changes. Changes in the ways they do things, changes in the relationships they have, changes in policies, in practices, and also all type of changes in terms of planned changes, some things that you already were looking for, and planned changes, positive and negative. So you open up the word change. The word outcome in outcome harvesting is about harvesting all types of changes. And then once you have that map very clear, then you work backwards in order to see how your intervention contributed to those changes, to the positive and to the negative. And maybe you find out that some of the positive changes that you see, even if you intended them, they might have not been generated by you. And some of the positive changes that you see, maybe you didn't intend them and you have generated them, you see? So the logic is reversed in the way that you don't start saying, okay, we did this activity and then that activity led to this output and then this output to this outcome, right? Okay, let's go and check whether we can find this outcome. That's not the way. The way is you go all the way to the world of outcomes, you find for them, you map them, and then you go backwards. This is a very important aspect of outcome harvesting. So why we use it? Well, we use it because we want to get the full picture of what we have achieved. We don't want to check whether our objectives, which are the intended positive outcomes, this is what objectives are. These are the effects, the changes that we were intending positive for people we want to positively influence from the beginning. When you want to get a full picture, and when so many things have happened and so many changes have happened in the strategy, that you see that the changes that you initially planned might not be the full picture. There may be a lot of other changes that have happened because the context was unpredictable. And as we saw in strategy testing, you have been adjusting all the time, right? So when you find yourself in that situation, outcome harvesting is one of the, that's the ground for applying it. Yeah, when you feel that a normal monitoring evaluation process would leave out very important parts of what has occurred. And when you see that there might be a lot of positive impacts of, changes that you might have contributed to generate that are not included in the original documents because you started working differently, because you tap on opportunities that appear, that emerge, outcome harvesting, then it's the method. We have put here a table from a document from ODI. You have the link at the source to this document at the bottom of the page, where actually the ODI, the Overseas Development Institute, links why to use outcome harvesting based on the 3 types of flexible programs: innovation, uncertain pathways, and implementations that are implemented in stable environments. And you can see that when you use outcome harvesting in innovative pieces of interventions, outcome harvesting help you find out all the range of outcomes, that emerge from having tested your ideas. When you have uncertain pathways or contested pathways of change, which means that you can achieve the change from different pathways and avenues, what outcome harvesting helps you with is it helps you to learn how that happened. So when there is a strong need from learning on how things are generated in reality, because there was uncertainty about how they could be achieved, outcome harvesting retrospectively helps you making sense of what has happened, telling you the story. Actually, often you see outcome harvesting mixed with storytelling with most significant change and all these other methodologies that help explaining change. And then, of course, when you are operating in an uncertain, unstable environment, let's say humanitarian, you know that there might be unintended and potentially negative unintended effects or changes that you might have generated because the context was extremely cumbersome. And then outcome harvesting can help you as well a lot, because outcome harvesting does not only focus on positive outcomes, but also on negative outcomes and unintended. So this is the why. This is the process. You have here a link to Better Evaluation, which is a website in which you can see, the Better Evaluation is a website managed by the Global Evaluation Initiative, and you can see in that website plenty of methods that we have gone through here and others that we will not have time to go through. Outcome harvesting is one of them, and you have all the materials in there as well. You have them in the outcome harvesting website and also in the Better Evaluation. And also you have them in the Google folder, okay? So there's no way to get lost. The interesting thing about outcome harvesting is that this reverse logic is applied in a structured way. So there are 6 steps. They're sequential, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, but are also iterative. So you can go back, yeah? You can establish iterations. You can go back, refine the previous step, and then go forward. This is one of the interesting things. And step number 4 is very important because it gives credibility to the methodology, which is that you substantiate, you triangulate actually the data that you get from the harvest. So is this intuitive thing that we have all done at some point when evaluating, which is looking back and actually checking what has actually happened rather than basing our evaluation in the results framework, because we know that lots of things have happened that were not in the results framework. It's applying that logic, but making it in a particular structural way. So let's go very quickly through these 6 steps, and then we will have Myanmar presenting the case of how to apply this. The first step is the design of the harvest. So when you decide to apply outcome harvesting, it is very similar to the design of an evaluation. You have to decide what type of questions, what do you want out of the harvest? What are the questions that will guide the harvest? It's a bit like evaluation questions. Here they are called harvesting questions. And then you also think in terms of who will we engage in the process. As a strategy testing, it's a process that it's heavy on engaging stakeholders. It's not just sending surveys and getting data on. You want to talk with people because you want to see how different stakeholders perceive the changes that have been generated. This is an important part. The second step is the review of the documentation. And then you start drafting outcomes, outcome statements. Outcomes are types of changes that you have seen. And here again, it is important that you think in terms of all types of outcomes, as we said, foreseen, unforeseen, positive, and negative. We give you here a small little tool, which is the categorization of outcomes with the type of questions that can help you identify in documents. Later on, you will repeat those questions with stakeholders that you engage with in order to harvest outcomes, but the questions are the same. So in order to identify a negative, unintended, or unforeseen type of change, you ask, okay, what did not work or is not working well that you did not foresee from the beginning? So you set that frame of mind and try to harvest changes that coincide with this definition. And then it's important to think as well that in terms of scoping, that outcome harvesting focuses, of course, in outcomes. Outcome harvesting is not to assess impact. So it is when we think in an intervention in terms of spheres, the sphere of control, what you control, which are inputs and activities, then there is the sphere of influence, which is what you want to influence, which in the case of UNFPA and many other development organizations is behavioral change, the way people do things, the way people think about things, or behaviors that people and institutions have. And then there is the sphere of concern, which is the impact. That's too far. Outcome harvesting focuses on behavioral changes, as we will see. Okay, so that will be the second step, and that is all desk review using implementation reports, midterm evaluations that you might have, but that's desk work. And then the third one is you open up the process to engaging with people. So you continue trying to come up with outcome statements and identify all these changes that there might be there, changes in behavior, positive, negative, intended, unintended, in actions, in ways of thinking that you might have contributed to, but you do that through engaging with people. And of course, you might use surveys, you might use interviews, but then focus groups and workshops, even email exchanges. You try to engage with the people that have been involved in the intervention or have received those changes in a direct way. Here in this, in order to produce these outcome statements, we also have, this is based on the methodology, these Q questions. Yeah, in order to find out what changes have happened and how you have contributed to them, you might want to guide all these conversations you will have when you engage with the stakeholders, asking questions such as very simple ones. What has changed? Yeah, and then for whom it has changed. Maybe for different people, it changed in different ways. When and where it changed. This when and where is very important to know whether you contributed to it. Maybe some things change before you intervened, right? Why does this change matter to your objectives? Because then you might come up with so many changes and some of them are not then relevant for your analysis. And how did you contribute to them? These are the questions that will help you then knowing what changed because of what you did and how you influence this thing that changed. Okay, so these are like tools. And we also put here a bit of a glossary based on the outcome harvesting methodology of what outcome means when you do an outcome harvesting. An outcome is an observable change in behavior. Yeah, and that change can be, as you can see in the second item, a change in relationships, in activities, in what people do, in their knowledge, in what they know, in the policies that they design and implement, or in the practice that they do. Okay, so you have here a little bit of glossary because it's important. We talk about outcomes in UNFPA, but sometimes outcomes in UNFPA and other agencies are not necessarily coincide with the definition of output in an outcome harvesting. Every time that you identify an outcome, negative, positive, intended, and intended in outcome harvesting, has to be an observable change in behavior. That's the idea. That's why outcome harvesting is for. Okay, then you've got the substantiation. Substantiation is about double checking. It's about triangulation. And here the idea is that once you've got all your outcome statements with the main outcomes, positive, negative, you try to do a bit of a fact check. And this fact check is about bringing in people that are independent from the intervention, yeah, that they're not involved, so they don't have a conflict of interest, but they know, they're knowledgeable about the intervention. Myanmar country officers, now they will explain a bit on the challenges of that, but the idea is to find, and those knowledge, it depends on the scope of what you are harvesting, but usually other UN agencies and other implementers that are doing similar things in the communities that you're working in, those would be the typical usual suspects for substantiation. It's important that they know about those changes that you are analyzing, but that they have not been involved in the intervention. They have not been your partners. Then you've got the analysis and interpretation of all these map of real outcomes that you have come across. So the idea is that you sort them and categorize them in terms of different changes for different people. You can sort them out by type of actors. You can sort them out by positive and negative. You can sort them out in different ways. And once you sort them out and you have that map of real outcomes that you have on the table, you try to identify patterns and trends. Oh, look here, the way in which we generate change and we could influence the way in which things are done was this particular pathway. That's where you extract the learning. We will show you a number of examples of outcome harvest. And in those examples that we will show you at the end of this presentation, you will see some that identify patterns and trends very well. And probably the one that is more complete is an example from the World Bank. Yeah? We will show you an example of the World Bank. They did outcome harvesting in a number of interventions in 2014, and they did a very thorough identification of patterns and trends. That document, which is also in the Google Drive, is the only one from the World Bank, so you cannot miss it, did that very thoroughly. And the last thing is to support the use of findings. And this is very important. When they created the outcome harvesting methodology, the idea is that it's based on outcome mapping, which is a methodology that already existed, and in utilization-focused evaluation. So it's about mapping outcomes and then use what you have learned to make decisions, to adapt, to take adaptive actions and improve. That's a very important idea. This is not just a descriptive exercise where you just map the outcomes and say, okay, these are the outcomes. No, you have to analyze that and then make an action out of that. Is a learn to adapt tool. Yeah, and this is very much emphasized in the methodology. If then you don't use all these things that you have learned in order to adapt and do things better, it shouldn't be considered outcome harvesting as such, as this methodology. Then you've done some type of harvest on outcomes to inform or maybe to report on what you're doing. That would be different. And okay, now, yeah, right in time, 10 past 9. And now we have Myanmar country office, yeah, Sridevi and Winnie, we have been working at, well, they've done all the work, but like collaborating with them a bit because they decided already a few months ago that they wanted to apply outcome harvesting. They have applied outcome harvesting. So now we will stop this presentation and we invite Sridevi and Winnie, you can upload your presentation to share with us your experience with outcome harvesting. In your particular case, you use it as a third-party monitoring methodology. So the floor is yours.
Thank you, Jordi. Apologies, colleagues, I'm not putting on my video because I'm right now outside. So I think just before I start, let me tell you that, I'm very proud to be associated with the Myanmar country office because we have been trendsetters, so to speak, in UNFPA. As we are one of the first Nexus programs, the WGF, the Women and Girls First program, which started way back in 2014-15. And also, like I just presented at the global technical meeting about this example of our Nexus program. So I'm really happy that, we are one of the first country offices to do this as well. So just taking a little bit of pride before I move on to the presentation. So this is, let me just give you a brief background of the context and the program so that it really helps you understand why we chose this method. So Women and Girls First program is a Nexus program that was designed after the first Myanmar census in 2014. And this came up when a couple of donors who supported the census really wanted to support a much larger GBV programming, and the UNFPA leadership at that time decided that it should be a multi-donor and a pooled fund. So that's how it emerged. And from 2 donors for this phase, now we have about 6 or 7 donors supporting us. So in the first phase, which started in end of 2015-16, it ran through until July or June of 2019. And from 2019, we started the second phase, which was much bigger. Donors doubled the investment from about 11 million to 24 million for the next 3 years, which is 19 to 22. And we moved on with an integrated GBV MHPS's SRHR program and a Nexus program, which means we were straddling between humanitarian development and social cohesion. We did not have it as peace building, but we have it as social cohesion activities at the community level. So these are the 3 pillars of our program. And but what happened in 2020, all of us have suffered the impact of the pandemic. And that's how, the first hurdle for the Women and Girls First program phase 2 was COVID. And that's when we were also doing our endline evaluation for phase 1, which was impeded by this pandemic. And so that evaluation also took like a long time. And then it was a mixed modality, like in person where possible. And it also took a long time for us. So after the evaluation, we really couldn't actually visit the field because one was the pandemic and the COVID restrictions. And already we were operating in conflict affected states of Myanmar, which are actually the border states in Myanmar, where the ethnic conflict has been one of the longest civil wars going on for over 6 decades. So that is where we were already operating. And then it was further compounded by the pandemic where, even the ethnic actors had their own restrictions. And so our staff had their restrictions of movement. So that was 2020 for you. And 2021 was the coup, which most of you may be aware of, on February 1, when there was a military takeover. So following that, there's been like extremely challenging access issues. Initially, it was a lot of the resistance movements across the country that prevented us from going to the field. And later on, it has now taken different forms with conflicts, not just restricted to the conflict-affected states, but all across Myanmar. And then in end of 2021, we actually piloted the remote monitoring in certain ethnic areas as well. And we tried to see whether it will work, given the internet connectivity challenges and the familiarity of this tool, which we jointly developed with our partners. And we were trying to see whether this is really going to help us. And to a certain extent, we did use this remote monitoring. And after that, we realized that for the non-government controlled areas, but now we are saying is ethnic controlled areas, there we couldn't visit those locations throughout almost phase 2 of the program. And we have a significant percentage of our programming in the ethnic controlled areas. So we decided that, given all of this escalation, the volatile situation, it might be really important for us to do this third-party field monitoring, because we also realized that, UNICEF was using an agency to do something similar. And it was then that, we decided, I think around September, October, we had decided that we should do outcome harvesting. We should use the outcome harvesting methodology to actually see, what are those changes rather than use the conventional third-party field monitoring. And that's really how we started thinking of outcome harvesting. And as Winnie and I were thinking and discussing this, it was so timely that, we also saw Jordi and Joseph present this, and we were really thrilled about it. So this is how really we came to choose outcome harvesting. So about the details of, where we are now and what have been some of our takeaways, I'm going to pass the floor to Winnie, my colleague, who is actually leading on this along with the consultants. Over to you, Winnie. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ray. So let me introduce first. This is Winnie. I'm an analyst for Women and Girl First program and work for the UNFPA Myanmar country office. So I'm going to present about the full process of organ harvesting. Okay, so that is the status of organ harvesting that we are applying in our study, which most of our stage are similar with what Jody present in the just a moment. What we had differences in our study, we had one more step, which is like identifying the significant outcome. So that is the only one thing different from the organ harvesting standardized stages. So in the design phase, so the stage 1 is the design, the harvest. In the design phase, what our evaluation company done is like we identifying the outcome and we prepare for the data collection. And in that stage is kind of the inception phase. We review the all program document and baseline online data from the Women and Girl First program, different IP report, and etc. And then after that, we move to the stage 2. Stage 2 is kind of missing literature review and also the data collection stage, which is we conduct the KI with our implementing partner and subcontractor to gather the all expected outcome from our program implementation. So that is the one part of data collection stage in organ harvesting, and then we move to the stage 3. After gather the all expected outcome, we conduct the FGD with the community member to harvest, to collect the all outcome, including the significant change related to our program activity, which has been observed in the community. So after collecting all observed outcome with the different group, women group, men group, and adolescent girl, so we collect all outcome, and then after that, our evaluation team identifying the significant outcome as a stage 4 before we developing the evaluation tools for stage 5, which is very important. Just Jody mentioned that is very important stage to kind of by checking the expected outcome, harvested outcome in the previous stage. So that is before we conduct the substantiated outcome in the stage 5. What we identify the significant outcome, and we develop the evaluation questionnaire based on the different contexts, because we harvest the outcome in the different areas, and their response for the observable changes in the community are different based on that context as well. So based on their findings from the different stages of organ harvesting, evaluation team develop the evaluation tools and go to the stage 5. After stage 5, now we are in the analyze the outcome. So we analyze the outcome based on the intended outcome and what are the actual outcomes that we achieve, that we find out in this study, and also related to the program implementation of effectiveness of this implementation to these observable outcome and these changes outcome. So now we are in that stage, and then the last stage will be the support of the use finding. In that stage, we are going to conduct the data validation workshop with the different IBs, subcontractee, to validate our findings before we finalize the report. That is why Jody mentioned the all stages are interlinked. Like after having the data validation workshop, we'll go back to these stages again. If needed, we'll look at the findings from the different stages. And then we will finalize the report and use for the accountability as learning and adaptation for the Women and Care First program phase 3. And also we are planning to use these results as a secondary data for our online assessment of Women and Care First program phase 2 as well. So these are the stages of organ harvesting that we are using in our study. Let me move to another slide. So in terms of timeline, initially we are planning to complete it within 5 months. However, because of the expected security concern during the fieldwork phase, and also taking time in developing the evaluation tools in the inception phase, we need 2 more additional months to complete this study. And we are expecting to finish to complete and to have a final report in the end of March. So that is the total timeline of this study. So what is UNFPA role in this journey? So for this study, we define the 3 phases as an inception phase, fieldwork phase, analysis, and report writing phase. So in the inception phase, we started with a kickoff meeting with the evaluation company after contracting process, and we UNFPA is to have to orient to the IP about the organ harvesting process, what we expected from each stage, what are the possible respondents for each stage, what will be the sampling frame, what kind of evaluation tool should be used, and etc. In addition to this, we have to make sure with the evaluation company what we expected from this study, what are our expectation, what is the objective of this study, and etc. So after kickoff meeting, we have to share all program documents for their designing the outcome, and also we need to start coordination with support from the IP for the fieldwork data collection phase as well. So we have to prepare such kind of preparation for the fieldwork phase, and also we have to provide the intensive review and input in the evaluation tools against the evaluation objective. This is very important, and in that stage, we got the technical support. We see the technical support from the evaluation team, Jody and Joseph and Valeria, for their review and technical advice to the evaluation company. What kind of tools should be used, especially in the substantiation phase, who should be the respondent for this stage, and how to facilitate the FGD and KN with the respondent, etc. So we do have a kind of extensive support from the headquarters, and also we need to facilitate the inclusive sampling frame, not to left behind the person with disability, a different ethnic minority group, and etc. So that is what UNFPA have done in the insertion phase, and then move to the fieldwork phase. So in the fieldwork phase, the first thing what we have to do is we have to closely coordinate with the IP to identify the best location for the evaluation to piloting and testing, because without having the good evaluation tools and without well tested, we will not have a good quality data at the end of the study. So that is really important for us. And also we do provide the intensive review and the result of testing and provide the technical input in time, and we make sure the evaluation company address all input, and they revise the evaluation tools before they collect the data in the phase setting. In addition to this, for the enumerator and field researcher for better understanding what the Women in Care First program are doing, for which services in where, since when, etc. So they need to have a well digestion about the Women in Care First program implementation for better facilitation and better data collection, and to have an intended result at the end of the study. So we have to orient to field researcher and closely coordinate with the field researcher team for the regular update as well, to in case if they have a security concern and they have issue with the coordination with IP and etc. So we have to closely coordinate with not only with the research team leader, also have to coordinate with the field research team as an informal communication way. So after finish the fieldwork phase, we can say that the end of January, now we are in the analyzing and report writing phase. So as in this way, what we have received from the evaluation company is we have received the key findings from this study, from this outcome harvesting methodology study, and then now we are in the reviewing stage of this key finding, and we are reviewing and providing the input. So that is where we are. And after that, we also have an agreement with the evaluation company on remaining deliverable and what will be the final report and what is the remaining test. And we make sure that evaluation company to deliver our expected quality report and product within the agreed timeline, not later than March. And we have a kind of agreement between UNFPA and evaluation team by having the regular catch-up call and also through the email. So that is where we are right now and what UNFPA have done in this journey. So let me move to the another slide. That is the sampling size and location of this study. Since we designed the outcome harvesting to integrate in the third-party field monitoring, location came from the third-party field monitoring rationale, which is non-government control area, which is hard to reach area, which is we cannot access in person. Can say like trees that like almost Women in Care First program phase 2. Based on that, we decide the location, and we design the tools and sample size based on the outcome harvesting methodology stages. Let me move to the another slide. There is quality control mechanism from our evaluation company. And for the sake of time, I will not go very detailed. So it's just for your information. And let me focus on the challenges. So in terms of challenges, the first one that we experience is identification of the vendor. Since we announced the vacancy for this study, we only got the one vendor who applying our study. And we have to extend our announcement next 2 weeks, additional 2 weeks to have more vendor. However, still we still have only one vendor, which is less capacity less experience in the outcome harvesting methodology in terms of evaluation. So as a result, we are currently in developing the evaluation tools. UNFPA team have to totally handle in the developing the evaluation tool, developing the assembly framework, and etc. Even we have to we seeking the technical advice from the headquarters to have a quality evaluation tool against the evaluation objective. So that is our first experience in working with the unqualified can say evaluation team, and how much we are spare our time and effort to make it happen. Another thing is like a fieldwork phase. In fieldwork phase, arrangement taking longer than we expect because of the unexpected security concern, closely surveillance from the de facto authority, and present or look at ethnic group during data collection. As a result, some IP are unwilling to disclose the information because of their close surveillance and they are having in the data collection. In terms of communication, some location, since our location had to reach area, non-government control area, internet and phone line accessibility is very limited. So as a result, there has been delay in communication and response in some cases. Another thing is some area, we cannot collect the data from the beneficiary and community member because of the intense fighting. And it's for field researcher, it's very high security concern, and even they cannot travel, and they don't have since they have the lack of travel document in the area, especially that is happening in the Myanmar Thai border area in Karen State. So and that is another challenge that we have is during data collection phase. Another thing is like assessing the IDP camp in NGC area and kitchen state. Because our implementation in the non-government control area kitchen state as well. And before we go to the IDP camp, we have to take the permission from the ethnic organization. And we have to stay, our field researcher have to stay one night in their compound before going to the IDP camp. So such kind of delay happen, and we need to have kind of permission from the EAO organization. Another thing is how to reach area, and it takes time for our field researcher to assess their location and high security concern because of the current complete volatile situation in Myanmar as well. And as a result, it is like high cost for transportation, and we have to ensure all data collected in one trip. So these are the significant challenges for us that we have facing until now. Let me move to the key takeaway point. So even how we facing many different challenges and experiences about the new adaptive evaluation methodology, which is organ harvesting. This is very new for us, and this is new for the evaluation company as well. So we would like to share key takeaway point to other colleagues from the UNFPA country office for their thinking in the for the future organ harvesting methodology, if they are thinking to use in the future. So the first one is UNFPA team itself to need to have a good understanding on organ harvesting methodology. What is the strength and limitation of the organ harvesting methodology? What is whether this methodology is fit with our context or fit with our evaluation objective, etc. So we need to have a well digestion about this methodology is the critical part that we would like to share with you. Another thing is the identification of the right evaluation company. It's really important and to think about, because with if we cannot have a right evaluation company where we exclusively involved in all process, and we have to handholding whole process, and we have to spend our time and effort. So that is another key takeaway point for you to consider. And that key takeaway point is strong understanding of the program, and especially the evaluation company need to understand and what is our program implementation, what is our theories of change and result framework, etc. So that they were that were easier for them to understand what is our implementation in that area, what are the expected outcomes, what are the unexpected outcomes, so that they can facilitate and they can design the harvest. And also that will be support for whole process of organ harvesting. So that is really important. Another thing is close engagement with the evaluation team, such as having the regular call, formal informal communication for the regular update and etc. So that is really need for us to have it, because we cannot let them alone to do. So we need to have a closely coordination as a quality control mechanism as well. Another thing is coordination and support from the implementing partner and EO. Since we collect the data in the non-government control area, hard to reach area in the implementation area, we definitely need to have a coordination and support from the implementing partners that guarantee. And if we work in the EO area, we definitely need to have a permission from the EO organization as well. So that is another key takeaway point. In terms of evaluation tools, before we roll out we call it the real-time real data in the field setting, we need to have a well-tested evaluation tools, intensive review and revision to address our all intensive technical comment, and also make sure the evaluation tools address the evaluation objective. So that is another thing. The remaining three key takeaway from would like to share is we need to have a qualified enumerator, of course, especially for this qualitative study. So this study is different from the another evaluation, and we focus on the chain and then we backward. So we need to have a very qualified enumerator who can well facilitate to have a better result by having the open discussion with the community, good facilitation skill in focus group discussion and KI, etc. So we definitely need to have a qualified enumerator to have a quality product at the end of the study. Another thing is we need to have a local enumerator. So that is one of the point that we choose this evaluation company. Of course, only one evaluation company apply because they have a local enumerator who are working in the non-government control area, EAO area, and hard to reach area. So they even we are still facing the access issue. Normally they can access the camp and village easily, and also they can speak the different local languages. So we can already address the language barrier, access issue in some area. So we need to definitely have an ethnic local enumerator if we are working with a different community and diverse population. Another thing is we definitely need to have a support from the headquarters technical team for the evaluation, and we, Myanmar Country Office, we do have a very supported technical advice and leading leadership from the headquarters team. Without having their guidance, we are not on the right way, and we are struggling. We may have to struggle a lot with this evaluation company. So that is one of the most important thing is we definitely need to have the support from the headquarters team. So that is all from our side. We would like to share with you about the organ harvesting, using the organ harvesting in third-party field monitoring, and what we have learned, what we have faced, and etc. So our presentation is finished in here, and I think that is the time to ask for a question and answer if you may have. Yeah, thank you. Over to you, Jody.
Thank you so much, Sridevi and Winnie, again, for this thorough, clear, and very detailed presentation on your experience. Also, thanks for your generosity to explain us and to share with the whole team your experience. We really, really thank you very much. Now, we would like to open for colleagues to ask any questions or any clarifications, any thoughts that you might have had after this presentation. But since I'm talking, and if you allow me, I would like to ask you, Sridevi and Winnie, I know that you haven't finished the exercise. I know that now the contractor, Economics, they're writing the report with all the analysis, but I would like to see a bit from the experience so far, what is the value that you see in this tool? You have applied for third-party monitoring, yeah, but all these focus on outcomes, on changes, and what the methodology implies. It's very clear, it's a challenging methodology. It needs expertise. But if you may, could you tell us a bit about the value that you see, having into account that you haven't finished yet, and there will be probably a lot of value once you get the report with all the outcomes, and then you use that in order to inform future phases of the program. But so far, over to you.
Thanks, Jody. I mean, just a couple of things. One is that we tried a new methodology. We are shifting from the way we conventionally do the evaluation. Of course, this is a third-party field monitoring, but even in a third-party field monitoring, to use outcome harvesting, I don't think many offices or even other agencies have done something like this. So I think in that sense, we have actually empowered the consultancy company as well, and then our own team in addition to our own team. And we have kind of introduced this whole thinking around how you can capture these changes even with the implementing partners. So in that sense, I mean, if you look at the big picture, I think these are really important because we are looking to shift the mindset. And then, the other thing that, having said that, it's been a struggle with a consultancy company that doesn't have experience of doing outcome harvesting, we also want to add that it's, as long as the company has like very good field researchers and commitment, it's really okay, because there is an advantage to having a company that is less experienced. We managed to actually go through this journey together. As Winnie was indicating, of course, it has been a burden on our time because we didn't anticipate that like asking a consultancy company to do this would be a burden on our time. But then we have actually enjoyed this process. I think certainly we have learned more, and that's the overall thing that I want to say. But apart from that, in terms of the outcomes, some of the things that we are seeing in the initial report now, really interesting. I don't think we have anticipated these sort of changes, like especially about the family planning. the family planning awareness, some of the things that have come out is quite startling, I must say. Like people thinking it is for limiting population. Yeah. So, and this whole awareness that we are doing is just for limiting the population. And then we also see a lot of positive things like the decrease in early marriages because unmarried girls are able to choose their partners. Youth are a little bit more free. We have seen there's also perception of persons with disabilities. There has been a slight shift in that. And then, but one interesting thing that we noted in North Myanmar is that the underage pregnancies have increased. And because, this is just initial, right? We have not yet correlated, we have not yet discussed with the partners, but they're also interested only in the menstrual pads. But and then there is underage pregnancies because we're talking about an ethnic area where there is a perception that you should not limit your population because you still need to fight, and you need ethnic people there we need to produce more children, kind of thing. So it's like they don't want to decrease their population. So I think, these are very interesting. They are all nuanced. Yeah. We just need to delve a little bit deeper to understand what implication it's going to have in how we tailor the strategies for the next phase of the program, which is starting on May 1, 2023. Also, just want to add that we are doing another study, which is on the shifts in community engagement modalities after the pandemic and the coup for Myanmar. I think this will also benefit other country offices, because we are looking at how these online modalities, are they really inclusive? So our intention was to actually look at use these two pieces of research to help us design our third phase, or fine tune some of the strategies of our implementing partners. Sorry for taking long over. Thank you.
No, thank you very much, Sridevi. Actually, thanks a lot for the complete reply. Winnie, would you like to add anything to what Sridevi just mentioned?
Yeah, nothing from my side, Jody. Yeah.
Okay. We see there's a hand raised by Taranga. Please, Taranga, take the floor. The floor is yours.
Oh, no, thank you, Jody Joseph. And I was really enjoying the session. It's really, really helpful for us, because we are trying to see how we can use outcome harvesting at the midterm review. We are doing a guidance on midterm review right now for the organization. So, but we had some questions. So I thought this is the right time to ask you after looking at the tools. We review all the tools also. And not only midterm review, annual reviews also, actually, because we want to really standardize them in the organization. One thing about is complexity. So complexity linked with the learning. So if we don't want to go a too complicated routes, if you want to hire companies or another. So how can we make it because we see right now complexity really challenging learning here. So how we can make it a simple, but we get the quality findings for us, which we can really go for, learn and adapt. So that's one side. Because if I look at the combination of third-party monitoring and outcome harvesting, I see a big complexity here after listening to the Myanmar situation. So do we really need to third-party side, or can we do it our own? Because most of the midterm review and annual is just internal. So the second one is about the validating outcomes. I know there's a step, we have a control groups. You bring some stakeholders and trying to validate it. So do we have any other, because that was a place where we stuck. Is that strong enough to validate those outcomes, right? So it may, so any other quantitative tools, do we need to use any other? I just want to know what you think about it. That's the second complexity we encountered on this. And the third one is, do we need to go, the complexity I mentioned earlier, the independent side of it, right? So the midterm review, annual review, we were thinking just internally, UNFPA colleagues, most of the time, us doing our own reflection, post and reflection, right? So what extent this independence approach is really critical here, or is just not that? Independence also sometimes challenging here, actually, for learning. I have another perspective coming to here. I just want to tell you. And the other one is, sorry for taking multiple, but this is really helpful. Link to the main outcome. Project or program has its own outcome. I know we are harvesting the other outcome. They may link or may not link to the main outcome. So how can we make a narrative at the end? I know there's whole analysis at the end, connecting all these arrows and making a diagram. But how can we really make sure that we are not going to a different route, that we are just achieving what we are supposed to achieve, which is maybe this particular program in Myanmar might have a particular objective. So how can we centralize that to that? Of course, intended, unintended, all these things can be presented as in addition to that. But that centrality here, because there's a value for money, all these other topics are. So these are some of the places where we stuck, Jody and Joseph. So I hope, I'm not expecting everything today, but just to give you a flavor a little bit, we have studied this. And so just want to know your perspective. Sorry, I don't want to take too much time of the country colleagues, but this is really interesting. Thank you so much.
Okay, thanks so much, Taranga. I have my view and Joseph's view on these aspects that you have asked, but I think it's, I would prioritize like Sridevi. You raise your hand, maybe you would like to answer, given the experience that you had.
Yeah.
Yes, please go ahead.
Yeah, just one point. I mean, we really wanted to explain a little bit about why we are using the third-party field monitoring, not because of the independence criteria, but it's more because, we are not able to reach those areas. We are not able to have access to those areas because you need to be of certain ethnicity, and then you can't be associated with the UN. So, I mean, there are so many other complexities in the country because of which we are using this third-party field monitoring. That's one big thing that I wanted to just clarify. We didn't want to over complicate things, but it's really because of a contextual necessity that we engage that. And the other thing I want to say is when it comes to all of these changes, and you were asking how it really ties up to the overall outcome of the program, we are very focused on that. We are looking at all of these, but overall we are focusing on the statements that we have agreed with the consultants, which is in line with the outcomes of the program. Thank you.
I think, yeah, I think, Rena, there is questions for you, Sridevi and Vinay in the chat from Rena. Rena,
Yes.
would you like to take the floor? Maybe you can ask them the questions, and thanks so much.
Yeah, thank you so
Nice
much, because I'm very interested in outcome harvesting, outcome monitoring. In the last RBM workshop, Taranga was there when we had this in Bangkok. We did some presentation of the results of our after action review. So we did not tap a third-party group, but I see with your presentation the advantages of tapping an independent group where the issue of language, the dialect was, and also reaching the most remote areas. And that's exactly my question, being able to reach those in the remotest areas, because most of the time evaluations only reach where the road is. So then you're not able to get the value from those living in the remotest area. So that's one element I saw as an advantage of what you did by working with a third party company. But at the same time, as Taranga said, we have also experienced doing the outcome monitoring ourselves. And the second dimension is on humanitarian. So the prospects of applying this in humanitarian response or emergencies. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Rena. Sridevi, would you like to react?
Just very briefly. The reason, this is the same consulting company that did our endline evaluation in 20 and completed it in 21, early 21. So we were very aware of, the ability of this company to have this network of researchers in the ethnic areas. That is, in fact, one of their advantages. So that's the reason also we chose them, though it was just one company that applied for it. And it's really very important. In Myanmar context, you really can't have, like, for instance, even Winnie, to go to an ethnic area is not really easy, especially because she comes from another ethnicity. So I think these complexities, even for our national staff, and where we are limited by also the security issues, UNDS's clearance. So there are so many things that, we are not able to do as UN, but these third-party consultants are able to do it. So that's in fact the biggest advantage, I would say. Yeah.
Thanks so much, Sridevi. Lucas, you have your hand raised. Please take the floor and share the question or comment with us.
Yes, good afternoon. My question is, I want to first thank the Myanmar team. That's a good presentation and approach to actually planning this way. But I wanted to ask you, Jody and John, when do you actually apply what is the good time to apply the strategy testing method or the outcome method? Because you find that maybe you start very well with a program that was linear. You knew your theory of change and the results that you wanted. But midly of your implementation, that's when you start realizing that, oh, okay, things are changing now. The environment is becoming complex and you are unable to eventually monitor and eventually see the implementation the way you wanted it. So how do you actually then think and go back to say, now I want to also involve the strategy testing approach or the outcome harvesting approach? Thank you.
Thanks so much. Thanks a lot, Lucas. Maybe I will start with this one. I mean, here, I would like to put it very clearly that, I mean, Joseph and I, we have our views on these methods. We've seen them being applied. We've reviewed agencies that have applied them. Some of them we have applied them ourselves, but it's our point of view. And actually, the questions that Taranga has put forward, like, should we do it our own, internally or externally, outcome harvesting, the challenges with the validation, and what are the ways of validating, different outcomes, or the centrality of the planned outcomes when, it's all about accountability. How do you incorporate? I think that this is a discussion that, and I'm sure that Joseph thinks the same, that the organization should have. So we will give you, of course, our point of view right away, but it's a very interesting discussion that would really benefit from different perspective from different people. So Lucas, asking your question, when would you apply? Well, first, strategy testing, because it's an adaptive moment, a strategy testing, in the case of the Asia Foundation, they apply it from the start, from the onset, because they knew that they were working on projects that were applied in an unpredictable environment. So they started from the beginning applying strategy testing, and that's how they reported and how they came up with the methodology. But actually, in fact, a strategy testing is quite flexible. You could start applying strategy testing at the time that you see that you need to start testing your strategy. And because if you look at the methods and the steps, because the steps and the implementation of the method is not very intensive in terms of, for example, you don't need a baseline. You don't need to start with a baseline. The only thing that you need is actually a more or less initial theory of change or program theory. You need then the program timeline, and then the guiding questions. And just with that, you can, it's more about making institutional and systematic that thing. So strategy testing, whenever you think you might start to apply it, you go and apply it. You could do it systematically, or you can do it on a need basis, right? The thing is, if you know that your program will already be implemented in an unpredictable environment, then you do it from the start. So there's no problem with that. With outcome harvesting, the answer is a bit more difficult, because outcome harvesting was designed for evaluation and also for monitoring. So you can apply it in both. Now, when do you start? Given the organizations that we have studied, that we have looked at, that apply outcome harvesting, most of the organizations apply it for evaluation, not so much for monitoring, right? But when that happens, the one precondition with outcome harvesting is it is centered in outcomes, defined as tangible changes in behavior of organizations, of institutions, and of people. So I would say that the precondition to start applying outcome harvesting is at the time where you think that there will be outcomes to be harvested. So in this regard, we apply a little bit like the agriculture, the farmer. We have to go there and harvest. So we have to make sure that the harvest will be mature. So we don't go there when changes have not yet happened or they are on the make. That would be the precondition. But if it's eventually you could apply outcome harvesting whenever you would like to apply it, given that the changes are there. Having said that, in 90% of the cases, what we observe is that outcome harvesting is used in midterm evaluations and in end of project evaluations also, in ex post evaluations most of the time. But if you have the resources, you could apply strategy testing and outcome harvesting at the same time, if you like. So all these methods are like, the idea is that they're flexible. They're methods for adaptive management that fit in adaptive management. So the methods are really flexible themselves. And now going into, Taranga, your questions and emphasizing the fact that these questions that you ask are a conversation rather than a question and answer, because they are crucial questions. But our views, our takes, Joseph and I takes, it's okay. So is it like in the case of Myanmar, they outsourced the data collection for the outcome harvesting, which was a very particular aspect, which is used in a third-party monitoring, right? Your own or outside? Well, when you look at the methodology and how people apply it, when this is done through evaluations, in evaluations, often, because it's an evaluation, they use externals. But there is a very strong involvement of the people that have implemented the program, because that is where the learning happens. Okay, so outcome harvesting, it's not a summative type of when it's used, it's not for summative type of evaluation. You want to learn about the changes and the outcomes. Therefore, people from in evaluations from the project, they are involved. Before we leave, I will just show you a couple of slides with examples of outcome harvesting used in evaluations. And if you go through those examples in the evaluation reports, you will see how in these workshops, in the workshops that happened, there was a high involvement of people inside the institution. And here this is open, there's no restriction. You can do outcome harvesting just yourself. The thing is that you have to involve external partners because you want to see how they perceive change and how these changes are working. So you need to involve external stakeholders. But in terms of contractor, you could do that yourself as well, internally in the organization, if you have the resources. In terms of your second question, Taranga, the validation, which is a very important one. So how do you validate? Well, the methodology developed by Heather Britt and Ricardo Wilson-Grau, they say, well, you do that through these knowledgeable external partners, people talking with them and exchanging information, maybe through a focus group discussion or interviews, so they validate these changes. Or you can also do it through review of documentation. So it is a triangulation exercise, right? It's a triangulation exercise. Now, I would like to add to that when the context is very complex, and here when I say complex, I don't mean complicated. I mean complex like what Joseph explained at the beginning of this session. Complexity meaning very different stakeholders having very different perspectives about what's going on. What often happens in outcome harvesting is that you see a particular change perceived differently by different people. Those having experienced the change, maybe those influencing the change, and you might have even different contradictory views. For some is a positive change, for others is not a positive change. So actually outcome harvesting opens up all these aspects about the perspectives and about values. What do we value? A particular change can be perceived differently by different actors depending on how you position yourself in a country system and what is your positioning institutionally or as individual. So that opens up that degree of complexity. Then the other one is about, okay, program has its own outcomes and what is the centrality of planned outcomes in outcome harvesting? And this is a very important question. And actually I would like to answer it also replying to a question that Winnie put into the chat, which is what is the difference between contribution analysis and outcome harvesting? The thing is, in the idea, at least the idea, then how it's applied, that changes. But the idea of the outcome harvesting methodology is that the centrality is in all type of changes. intended, unintended, positive and negative. That is the centrality. And then you go back to see the contribution. And then in looking at that contribution, you will cover the contribution to the plant, but also to the unplanned, right? If what you need is centrality in those that were planned, contribution analysis is much more of the tool in order to do that, because the centrality of contribution analysis is your theory of change, not what has actually happened, but how did you think that the things would happen? And this is one of the main differences between contribution analysis and outcome harvesting. Both look at the contribution that your program has done to a particular set of changes. The thing is that contribution analysis starts and looks at this whole thing from the theory of change, whether outcome harvesting looks at this whole thing from what has actually happened, not about what you thought would happen. This would be the difference. I would like to share actually an example now from Oxfam that was just published 2 months ago in November, where they use outcome harvesting and contribution analysis together because they do the two things. And it's a very complete exercise. Okay, I will show it in a second. And then also we need to answer your question about the difference between outcome harvesting and contribution analysis. This is the main difference, yeah, the centrality of the theory of change or the actual real outcomes. But there is also another difference, which is the definition of what is an outcome. In outcome harvesting, it's a change in behavior, whether when you're in a theory of change, you can have also different type of changes. And in terms of substantiation, both the contribution analysis and the outcome harvesting, they both have, that's a similarity. This is a step of the substantiation. So now if I may, before, let's see, time, yeah, it's actually, it's right at the time. Let me just share with you, you will find this presentation right away in the Google Drive, but you know, who uses outcome harvesting? Just to give you some of the examples. This is the example that I mentioned in 2014, 2 years after the methodology was developed, the World Bank developed these cases in outcome harvesting. Here you have a number of several cases, and it's a very good example of how they do the identification of trends and the analysis of trends. Once you have all the outcome maps, how you do that. Then another example that we thought was useful and was relatively at the beginning is this program in Bangladesh from CARE. It's CARE Bangladesh together with CARE Austria, and the program was funded by the European Union as well, by the Austrian Development Agency. And they have this is outcome harvesting in the context of a rights-based, it's not sexual reproductive rights intervention, it's more economic rights of women in Bangladesh, but the type of outcomes could be similar to the type of outcomes because they have to do with rights that you might have in UNFPA, and we thought that it was also a good example. Here you have another one in Pakistan from the European Union on economic empowerment. So empowerment, rights, these are the type of areas where we find a lot of outcome harvesting. Here you have also in the field of education in the UK. So this is not development. Outcome harvesting is also used beyond development in the education field. And then you see that after the COVID, after the pandemic, there has been an upsurge of outcome harvesting as a method to evaluate, for evaluations. All these examples that we are showing you here now are evaluations, yeah, and midterm evaluations or end of program evaluations. You also see like UNESCO continuing with education, but now in the field of the UN system. They did these, the support to the education sector plans in Jordan and Guinea, and it was done through outcome harvesting. Here you have the direct links to the report. Then you have here from USAID funded an outcome harvesting of the African Collaborative for Health Financing Solutions. And this is a very complicated program with many stakeholders in many countries, and they use outcome harvesting, and it was pretty useful for them. And this is the one that I mentioned from Oxfam, is the impact evaluation of the regional influencing work in the Horn East and Central Africa. We thought that this would be interesting for you as well, because it's about how you capture the contribution of influence. Yeah, and that has a lot to do with policy advocacy and the work that you do, policy dialogue in UNFPA. It's an interesting one. And as you can see here, it combines outcome harvesting with contribution analysis, and then also with process tracing, which is a method to capture the contribution they are all methods to capture contribution. Yeah, we haven't included this one because it's not used in turbulent processes and because it's quite time consuming, but it is one of the ones that was included in the first list when we did the presentation of these adaptive evaluation pills more than a year ago. We presented out process tracing, but in general, there was not a lot of interest. So we took it out, but it's also used together with outcome harvesting and contribution analysis. So these would be the examples. Before we leave, if we may, there is in the chat, you will find there is a survey. You can answer it in 2 or 3 minutes, very, very quickly. It's about, whether you think that you would be applying or you could apply these strategy testing and outcome harvesting. We're trying to get a sense of the need in country offices for assistance, like we did with Myanmar and collaboration, like we collaborate with Myanmar. So if you could answer this survey, it's less than 3 minutes. Actually, it's 1.5 minute multiple tests. So we can get feedback from you on your interest to apply or not these methods. That would be extremely helpful for us. And then just to wrap up, letting you know that on March 14 and 15, we will have PIL 5. And then on March 29, we are planning to have the last PIL. Okay, and then we will start with those of you wanting to apply all these methods, this process of, collaborating with you and accompanying you in the implementation of those. These are the topics. So now, PIL 1, 2, 3, 4, it's all about methods. And now PIL 5 and 6, it's more about mindsets, about attitudes, about leadership roles, how you lead this type of methods and implementation of these types of evaluation. There is a lot of facilitation in these methods, yeah, and leadership elements. We will look at that, and we will also look about the type of evaluative thinking and mindset that should be there attitudinally in terms of attitude and behavior when you apply those methods. Because you could apply all those methods and they might not work if you don't do that with the right mindset. And this is what we would like to look at. And this will happen the next month. So this is all from my side. I see that there is activity in the chat. I didn't have time to read it while I was talking, but I don't know, Valeria, if you would like to close the session, if there's anything that you would like to mention. You have the link, the Google Drive in the chat, so you can access the presentations, Myanmar presentation as well, and also all the documents that we have gone through in this presentation. Actually, Valeria is not there. She had a meeting. I remember now, she told me. So, okay, you have here the survey. Okay, so that would be it. Thanks so much for having joined this session, and we look forward to seeing you in mid-March in the other 2 PILs. Reach out to us if you have any questions or any aspects that you would like to further go through. We will be happy, Valeria, Joseph, and myself. You have our emails at the end of the slide deck presentation. Feel free to reach out to us, and otherwise we will meet you mid-March. And thanks so much for your time and having joined it. All the best.